Thank you for tuning in for today's Facebook Live event. I want to start by saying, due to the panelists and I being socially distanced and stationary, we will be removing our masks so it will be easier for the audience to hear. Good afternoon, Pirate Nation. My name is Laura Hayes, and I currently serve as your Student Body Vice President at East Carolina University. We have some very special guests with us today that we will get to momentarily. The structure of today's event will begin with 5 frequently asked questions that will be channeled to our panelists. Once we get through those questions, we will then accept live questions from our audience. If you have any question for a specific panelist, we do ask that you make that known in your question so that we can channel that to the appropriate panelists. If you have general questions, we will announce those to our panelists and have the appropriate areas of representation address your question. Please keep in mind that we may not get to every question that is asked, but we will try our very best to answer as many as we can. I would also like to remind you that our Return to Pirate Nation health plan is available for you to view on our website and social media platforms. Let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. First, I have Dr. Eric Newble, Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Involvement and Leadership, Mr. Bill McCartney, Associate Vice Chancellor for Campus Living, Jennifer Cavakar, Associate Director for Academic Advising and Support Center, and Bill Bagnall, Associate Vice Chancellor for Campus Operations. I will start with the FAQ session with the appropriate questions to each area of representation. I will then move on to the questions provided by the audience. So our first question goes to Dr. Newble. In what ways do students get involved beyond the classroom if student were in person, and how can they find their niche?
Well, I think the one thing we've learned throughout the last 4 to 5 months is that you don't have to meet exactly in person to advance the organization. I think it's important to look back at what the mission of your organization is, what the goals of your organization are. That's very different from organization to organization. For example, if your organization's goal is to do, say, community service off campus or community service, we have some organizations that do community service abroad. Relook at that goal. There's opportunities to get involved in the local community and to still advance the goals of your organization. I think also it's important to note that there are going to be different restrictions as we see it right now from the governor. There are different restrictions for inside and outside. So there are opportunities, particularly outside with the fresh air, with the ability to social distance, to wear a mask, to have small group interaction. For example, a leadership team as part of your student organization. And where inside there's going to be more strict limits about how many people can congregate. Take advantage of the different platforms we have. I know everybody knows about Zoom. Here at ECU we've been using a lot of Teams, but there's going to be a lot of training that's going to happen in the first few weeks of school. One at our workshop carousel for all of our student orgs, where they start to talk about not only what platforms are available, but also how to use those platforms in ways that you might not even have realized. We have an Engage platform, which we've used for years before. It used to be called OrgSync, now it's called Engage. And that platform provides a lot of opportunities to do things via the internet, to allow for surveys, club interaction, posting events, posting minutes, activities, and I think a lot of different things that we haven't quite fully utilized. So I think while maybe the traditional way of getting together in very large groups, in very large meetings might not be happening the same way, I think there are going to be opportunities to still gather, to advance the goals and mission of your organization, and I think this is a perfect opportunity when we're back to really start looking closely at your constitution, your goals, your organization outcomes, and to see about how do you mix that into the current environment, and I think that will only help us when we come out of COVID.
Thank you very much. Our next question is going to Associate Vice Chancellor McCartney. Explain the process and logistics of how on-campus students will eat in the dining halls.
I think that as I talk about this, a part of it will also apply to off-campus students when I talk about the retail portion. So what I have to say hopefully will apply to all of our students who might be listening. When you look at the meal plan portion, the meal plan, we made conscious choices not to change the basic core meal plan. Some schools have gone and made dramatic changes, going to all takeout, going away from all access, and going to individual and limited meals per week. And we've chosen to adapt our system so that we keep as much of the core of our meal plan as possible. So we are maintaining the all access dining option for students who are on the purple plan. So you'll be able to come and go from the dining halls between 7 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock at night on Monday through Thursday. Friday and Saturday nights, the dining halls close earlier at 8 o'clock at night. And then on weekends, on Saturday and Sunday, the dining halls open with brunch at 10 a.m. And so you'll still be able to come and go as often as you would like. One major change that we've made is that one meal a day out of the dining hall you can choose to take in a to-go fashion. And so that would allow you to go in and not have to stay seated in the dining hall and take your food away back to your room or to one of the numerous outdoor seating arrangements that we have about campus. So the dining halls have been adapted along the restaurant standards in North Carolina. So all of our tables are seated, and you will sit now 6 feet away from the closest table that's to you. In doing that, the capacity for the dining halls have been reduced by about 50%. And so there is still, though, around 350 to 375 seats available in each of the dining hall. And you will have the ability then to sit at a table with people that you choose and feel safe with as you go in. The big change that a returning student would see that new students will just kind of experience for the first time is there are now stanchions and line management as you go about the dining hall. And so it used to be that they were very kind of free flow and you could move from location to location. And much of the dining hall used to be cooked to order and self-serve. There is no more self-serve in the dining hall. Everything will be plated and served to you by someone who is masked and wearing gloves. Every one of the aspects of cook to order has had to be removed from the dining hall because cook to order means someone had to wait 3 to 5 minutes for their food to be cooked, causing lines to back up. And with the socially distanced lines that we're using in the dining halls of 6 feet, we really can't manage to have people stack up and wait for something to be made for them in that sense. The one exception about still made to order will be simple selections, which are for students with food allergies, and also the deli areas will still do sandwiches because that moves very quickly and it's not a problem. So when you go into the dining hall now, you must wear a mask, and you must wear a mask while you're in the food court area. Obviously, when you're sitting to eat your meal, masks are not a part of that. You will also find in each of the dining areas that have seating is a sanitation area where while we're doing extra cleaning in the dining halls, we want you to feel that you have control of the situation and where you sit. And so you'll see that you will have the ability when you go into the dining hall to go to an area and pick up wipes or pick up a spray and paper towels and wipe down your seat and table if that's something you feel is important to you. So we want to add that extra layer to that aspect. Beyond the dining halls, though, are actually the other features that your meal plan offers, both the Purple Bucks, which are really flexible spending dollars, and then the pirate meals. And so you might have 20, 40, or 60 pirate meals a semester, depending on which meal plan you picked. Those parts of the meal plan still exist. The big difference there when you start going into retail is that we formed an arrangement with Grubhub for use of the Grubhub app. And so you now can order something from retail and have it made and ready for you when you show up. Again, instead of standing in line and us queuing up to wait for something at Panda or at Raising Cane's, you'll be able to go in and actually order an hour ahead of time and tell what time you'd like to pick up your food and pay for it either with your meal plan or with a credit card or debit card, and then schedule the time that you want to pick it up and pick it up away from the lines that are forming for someone who just wants to queue up and order their food like we have in the past. The last really big change that you're going to see, and I mentioned before, is seating. And so seating is going to be at a premium, which means that you need to adapt the timing of your eating a little differently. Everyone can't eat lunch on campus at 12 noon. That is just, it was not possible last year or the year before, but it even is less possible today. And so lunch is served on campus between about 11 and 1:30. So adjust your schedule away from those peak times so that you avoid getting in lines and being a part of the line problem. We have added this year 36 outdoor tables in addition to all the picnic tables and that existed around every one of the residence halls and dining halls. And so you're going to be able to, with the to-go food or with your retail order, be able to sit outside and eat in a different kind of environment than you might have thought about in the past. The vast majority of those tables will have umbrellas with them, and so you should be able, even with some of the heat that we're experiencing here these days, find a way to be in the shade and be cool as a part of that.
Thank you, Mr. McCartney. I have a follow-up question for you. Would you mind explaining how transit will operate differently than in the past?
Yeah, transit has big changes ahead for it as well, and on two fronts. One is that all of the buses now will operate at 50% capacity, and seating in the buses will be diagonally throughout the course of the bus, so that you don't sit directly in front of or behind anyone. And so bus capacity will be greatly reduced. The other part of the problem that transit is having is that with the university closed from March through as we get ready to open now in late summer, they've been unable to recruit and train new bus drivers for the coming year. And so as we open in the fall, we will have a significant shortage of bus drivers. So if any of you out there are looking for a job, please reach out to transit. They're in a training mode right now and looking for drivers. But that's going to create backlogs and problems and shortages along some routes. That is just going to be the case until they're able to get people back into the stream and get people trained. They're short right now 60 bus drivers for the fall, and that will have an impact on service levels. A part of that means that routes that aren't tied to academics will not be running in the early fall until the bus driver pool expands. So the Walmart runs and the Target runs, even actually the run potentially between our two campuses, the medical campus and here our main campus, those will not be occurring. There will also not be some of the nighttime bus services to downtown that existed before. And that will be, I think, for returning students, one of the big changes they see.
Thank you, Mr. McCartney. Our next question goes to Jennifer Cabakar. Can the grade replacement process semester from Block 1 to Block 2? Or will a student be required to wait?
If a student's enrolled in a class in the first block and they do not successfully pass it, the problem you'll run into is the time frame. I'd encourage students and their families to take a look at the online academic calendar. There's 3 very specific pages, one for 15 weeks, one for the first 8-week block, and one for the second 8-week block. Looking at the time frame, the first 8-week block classes will end on September 25th, but the exams won't end until September 29th. Faculty typically have 48 hours to post grades. Classes in 8-week block 2 are going to start October 1st, so the problem students will run into is having your final grade posted to then reach out to an advisor to see if you can re-enroll in the class to take the second 8-week block. It's going to be a very tight window. If space is available, if your final grade has posted, and if it's necessary, certainly we would encourage students to work with their academic advisors if there is a need to re-enroll in a class they took block 1 into block 2. But again, the timing is going to be very tight. October 2nd is the last day to make any changes to the second 8-week block. So is it possible? Yeah, but it's going to be very tight to do that. So if you have any questions about making schedule adjustments, definitely reach out to your academic advisor.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our final FAQ question is going to Associate Vice Chancellor Bagnall. How often will academic buildings be cleaned? How will sanitation be conducted in campus facility buildings?
So our housekeeping staff cleans academic buildings on a daily basis. There will be a change in the focus. In the past, we may have gone into faculty offices or staff offices on a daily basis. Those are going to be reduced to once a week so that our staff can focus on those public areas and classrooms and hit the high touch areas of the campus. So when I say high touch, our housekeepers will hit the doorknobs, the handles, the buttons, the chair rails, the stairs, and those things, public bathrooms, lobbies, and entranceways, and those are done on a daily basis. Our staff is also staggered such that we have staff that come in at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. They focus on classrooms primarily in the early morning, so the classrooms are cleaned at least once a day. And then we also have a second shift that comes in the evening, and those folks hit some of those other high-touch areas. One of the things that I would focus on a little bit is the disinfectant that we use for our heavier duty cleaning is a 10-minute contact time. So when they're cleaning in the early morning and in the evenings, they're using that 10-minute, and it is probably one of the better, or if not the best, disinfectant that's out there. During the day, when they're out hitting those high touch areas that people see on a regular basis, that's a 45-second disinfectant. So in addition to that, students will see hand sanitizing stations as they enter major academic buildings. At the entrances, we will have some hand sanitizing stations that are there. In addition, our classrooms, our class labs, and computer labs will have sanitizing wipes in the classrooms. Similarly to what Bill McCartney said about the dining halls, if someone wants to wipe down their personal space for their classroom, or a faculty wants to wipe down their podium, that will be available to them. So those are the things that we're going to be doing on a daily basis. Obviously, one of the challenges that we've had recently is availability of materials for sanitizing and for sanitizing wipes, or for disinfecting wipes. And right now we believe that we have enough product on hand to get us through at least 3 months before we actually have to do another reorder. But it's going to be a continuous search for that product, as demand is really high right now.
Thank you, Mr. Bagnall. Our next question, which is coming from the audience, is directed for course schedules. When will TBA?
Okay. The Office of the Registrar has been working with academic departments for the last few weeks and making sure that proper social distancing is being met in the classrooms. For some of our courses, they've been moved into an online delivery method. So when students look at their schedules and see TBA, that typically is indicating that's an online course. What students can do is, when they look at their course schedule, if they click on the course name, it'll give you an instructional method, and you'll see either primarily hybrid, primarily face-to-face, or you might see Internet World Wide Web, and that would tell you that's an online class. Now, there will be some courses, most TBA classes are going to be taught asynchronously, so you can get online any day, anytime. There are some courses, however, that you will see have an online delivery method, but are going to meet synchronously. So you'll still see days and times listed, but that means the instructor is going to require you to go online into most likely Canvas and participate in an online course delivery method. So you'll be participating with the instructor, watching the instructor live during those days and times. So if you have any questions about what you're looking at your schedule, don't hesitate to email your advisor. If you're also not sure, you can email advising@ecu.edu. We'd be happy to look at your schedule.
Thank you, Jennifer. This next question is for you, Dr. Newble. Once campus is open, is it up to the school if campus closes, or is it only a system-wide decision?
It is a system-wide decision.
Thank you very much. Our next question, how will ECU promote and encourage students to follow best practices so that we don't end up packing up and shutting down in late September due to COVID?
I think this will happen in a variety of ways. I know on the housing front, we're going to work carefully to try to educate students that they are in control of whether the university stays open. It is going to be the behaviors that each and every one of us, even faculty and staff, as well as students, take every day to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and others, or we're going to find ourselves in a situation we don't want to be in. You're going to see messaging in all kinds of ways. There'll be signs up as you enter the academic buildings. There'll be information on the floors in the residence halls. We're sending home newsletters actually to residence hall students every 2 weeks right now, pushing a variety of messages, but all of it is about staying safe. It's about wearing a mask when you're in public. It's about wearing a mask when you come into the residence halls. It's about paying attention to the new policies and guidelines that exist around safety on campus. And so all of us are going to have that responsibility, but I think it's going to be a pretty available message for people, and it'll be hard for them to miss.
Thank you, Mr. McCartney. Our next question for our panelists, how can staff, students, and faculty feel comfortable returning to campus? How confident can we be that planned preventative practices will limit the spread of COVID-19 on an active campus?
Well, I think much of what Bill McCartney just mentioned is going to determine how successful we are. I can tell you the plans going into this, there have been committees and groups meeting about this at ECU for the last 2 months. So we started 2.5 months ago in planning for this. That planning included, for instance, I was on one of the facilities groups, 85 different references from across the country, from across the world. That included the CDC, that included our professional organizations, that included government organizations, private organizations, to determine what were the best practices out there for returning to life. And I think that's the important thing to remember. As our country, as our cities, as our local communities open up, these institutions are no different. They're going to start to open up too. That same question can be asked to, how do we stay safe in our community? How do we stay safe going to a restaurant? How do we stay safe going to Target or Walmart? You stay safe by following very simple practices. And I think the university has done a really good job, as most schools around the country, of keeping this very simple, in that it's you wear a mask, you socially distance, and then you wash your hands and sanitize as much as possible. There are a lot of other techniques that we're employing that you're hearing about, cleaning and time of disinfectants. Those are great, but if those other 3 things are followed, and followed by everyone, you are going to see a return back to campus, a return back to our communities will be very successful. Not without hiccups, but will be successful.
I want to add to that, and as you look at returning to campus, all of the efforts that we're making are being done to moderate and mitigate risk for students and for faculty and staff. The thing that worries me most is not what happens when you're a part of our community on campus, going to class, going into the dining halls. What worries me is what students are going to be doing after classes are over. What are the choices that you're making Friday night at 10 o'clock at night? Are you going out to parties? Are you trying to go to clubs? Are you trying to go to bars? Are you doing those things that are going to place yourself and the rest of us at risk? And it's those choices, I think, that are going to be most important, because I think all of the thought and planning that the university has done has been right on target in what we need to do to help all of us minimize the risk as we go through this.
Thank you. Our next question is for Associate Vice Chancellor Bagnall. The CDC website discusses ventilation systems in the classrooms. Has ECU looked at the ventilation systems and airflow in the classrooms?
We have looked at the ventilation systems. One of the things that becomes a little bit difficult for our environment at ECU is we're in a very hot, humid environment, and our buildings, classroom and office buildings, are not run like lab buildings. Lab buildings are 100% outside air that exhaust. Offices are recirculated air. So the things that we are focusing on is bringing in as much outside air as what we can without overwhelming the system, so we can still provide temperature and comfort and humidity control within the building, but utilizing as much ventilation as possible. The other thing that I would say that we do very well at ECU is we have a very mature, robust preventive maintenance system. So our PMs on our air handling units, on our filter changes are very regular, and what we see from our regular maintenance is that the filtration systems are relatively clean. When we do the changes, we don't see a big load up of dirt and dust on those. So our air distribution system is good, and we are trying to maintain as much of the ventilation. We're not increasing ventilation through into very specific rooms, because that changes the distribution for the rest of the building. But we are maintaining what's there, and we feel like we have a good program.
Thank you. Our next question from the audience: how will music ensembles and lessons be conducted since they spread COVID easily?
This may seem strange for the housing and dining guy to be answering this, but I've been working with the School of Music recently on this issue, and so I've had some conversations with them. I would recommend that if you are part of one of those groups, that you reach out to your advisor in the School of Music, that you reach out to faculty to ask very specific questions. But I do know they're making plans to do some of their classes outside. I know that they're restricting much of the performances that groups are doing this year to avoid that. We're actually set aside a place up on the hill for one of the faculty who teaches trumpet to have his classes outside. And so he'll be doing his individual and small group classes socially distanced in the outside as weather presents. So I think that there will be a variety of things. I know they're studying that and are concerned about it carefully. So make sure you talk to your advisor and the person teaching the class about what's going on.
And as a follow-up to that, an example is that we met with the School of Music, I think it was about a month ago, when they started looking at spaces, particularly for their vocal ensembles, right, the choirs. And one of the things we've looked at is we've looked at our deck. We have a 7,000 square foot deck here on the Student Center, which is open air, to use that. And we've actually secured one of our ballrooms, which, if you've been in just one of the 3 ballrooms, you know how big they are with 30-foot plus ceilings, where they'll be able to come in and socially distance for 2 hours a day to run their classes in there every day of the week. So we've allocated a great many of our spaces from Wright Auditorium, Hendricks Theater, and even some ballroom spaces to classroom spaces because they have larger ventilation areas, open air, very large, and people can spread out.
Thank you. Our next question. Are on-campus courses being staggered so when students leave a class they are not entering into a full hallway?
Certainly, the Office of the Registrar and academic departments have been looking at the schedule. When they first started looking at splitting the semester into 2 8 weeks, they looked at having different start and stop times. It will be staggered in a way. If you look at the course schedule, there will be courses that meet first 8 weeks that will also be interacting with courses that meet in the full 8 weeks. There will be typically half-hour intervals between classes. That is built in to allow time to clean and disinfect classrooms. I think too, faculty, most of us when you go to a college class, they certainly do tend to get in and out at different points in the time, but certainly we're going to try to minimize how many students are interacting in each of the buildings and classrooms at one particular time.
Thank you. Our next audience question. What will the Student Center and the Recreation Center look like this year? And, sorry.
Go ahead.
Just go ahead and include outdoor recreation facilities as well.
Well, one, they're going to look awesome. And one of the reasons why they're going to look awesome is because we have some of the best facilities in the country, hands down, both indoor and outdoor. But the other reason is we haven't been using them in the last 4 or 5 months. So they've been cleaned and cut and manicured to death. So they are in dire need of use. And so when we take the student centers, for example, on both of our campuses, they will start to open on Monday, the 27th. And so we're opening up a little early before the students get back because we want to start seeing what's working, what's not working, increase signage, look at traffic patterns in the building so we can see where we want to put sanitation stations or include more. They are going to be open roughly the same amount of hours. We're probably going to end up initially closing around 10 to 9 o'clock at night, a little earlier than we normally close. But the one thing I can confidently say is that it seems like at least every week, if not every month, things change. Things change in our world, they change in our state. So our hope is that as things start to open up and as things start to do well, because we're doing a great job here at ECU, we can look at extending hours. So all the regular facilities are going to be open. You'll see in both the student center and the recreation center that the machines and the seating have been spread apart. There's not as much seating in the student center as you're normally used to seeing in both facilities because they're allowing for some social distancing to occur. And in the recreation center, we're losing courts 1 and 2 to open play because we've moved half of our weight equipment onto those courts to allow for a further distance. I will say for recreation, indoor specifically, you need to download the Rec ECU app. It's on the App Store for both Apple and Android devices. Make sure you download that app. You are not going to be able to use the indoor facilities unless you go on that app and essentially make a reservation so we can kind of monitor the usage so we don't have people standing in big groups behind a group of treadmills waiting for that to be used. You know that our facilities, both on the health sciences and the rec center and on the main campus, are very large facilities. We can accommodate a lot of students, but that rec app is going to be important. We are also going to do health screenings. The recreation area is basically what's determined as a high vulnerability area for the spread of the disease because of the activity and the breathing and the sweating. So we'll be doing health checks when you walk in the building. So don't be shocked when you walk into the rec centers that you'll check the app, you'll be asked some basic questions, and you'll get a quick temperature check on your head to make sure that you're safe to come in. So we're using those kind of things. Outdoor facilities, we're trying to be as creative as possible. We worked with our grounds department here that we're going to be painting circles on the ground. You've seen this in a lot of the major cities around the country. That's worked really well. That circle will designate an area that you can sit in and safely be 6 feet away from the next circle. And we're actually expanding that when we go outdoors a little bit to about a 10-foot wide. We'll have those in a number of different locations on the main campus and on our Blunt and North Rec fields. So that way we can not only do general activities in classes out there, maybe yoga and other things where you can quickly come down, sit in a circle, and not worry about being there. Our athletic fields, as with our sports clubs, we're going to follow the same guidelines that are going to be followed by our athletic teams here at ECU. So if they're allowed to practice, we're going to allow our sports teams to practice following those safety guidelines and protocols, whatever they end up being, both from the NCAA and from our national rec associations, as well as from the state of North Carolina. And then if there are indoors, when we look at intramurals and things of that nature, certain intramural leagues, because they're just very high touch and they're very much contact driven, are not going to happen in the fall and could potentially happen in the spring, depending on what happens in Greenville and in our country. But there are a lot of other sports that we do, our rec sports, that are not necessarily high touch in nature, so that we can still do those intramural leagues as well. So again, the facilities are here, they're dying for use, especially our outdoor facilities, and again, I urge students to take advantage particularly of the outdoor facilities on campus.
Thank you, Dr. Newell. Our next question to Mr. McCartney. In the event that all classes go online, will we be required to vacate the residence halls?
That decision hasn't been made at this point in time. We're in some active discussions trying to determine what the university's stance will be. Internally within our department, we are okay with maintaining the residence halls open and allowing those students who still need a place to stay there. But there are a number of concerns that we have to go through institutionally before we're able to state what our policy will actually be.
By the way, I did neglect to tell you that while the student centers are opening on Monday, the recreation facilities are not open yet. And that's because we haven't gotten approval from the governor to open gyms and recreation facilities yet. So as soon as we get that approval, that's when they'll be opening.
Thank you. Our next question from the audience. Can you address scenarios of 1, student is quarantined on campus due to exposure with someone with the virus, and 2, someone comes down with the virus?
I'm a part of a group that's discussing that right now. The university is leasing space off campus to house students who will be isolated or quarantined should that become necessary on their part. The issue surrounding that is the university policy is right now in the process of being approved for how we're going to respond to students when ill and when in need of isolation. I would expect that formal policy to come out within the next week, and if so, it will be broadly distributed to people. It will be online on our webpage. It is a complicated situation. One of the things that complicates it greatly on our part is our residence halls are primarily shared bath facilities, and so we do not have the ability to isolate or quarantine people on campus should we need to do that. That can only happen in some other type of facility, which we're in the process of leasing space to do.
Thank you. The next question submitted by the audience. Will the students have to fill out some type of COVID-19 system log online each day?
I guess me again. It's my understanding that yes, as a part of being here on campus, students will be expected to log on to a web page through University app and be able to state their physical condition at that point by answering a series of questions about how they feel, and the expectation is that all of us, faculty, staff, and students are doing that daily.
Thank you.
I think the one thing I would add to that is that's not going to be just students. That's going to be
Right.
faculty and staff as well. I don't know if you said
Yes,
that.
I did.
Oh, sorry.
All right, our next question. Will ECU be disclosing the number of current positive COVID cases on campus every week? And can you expand on what reporting looks like on campus?
So I just about a week ago
But it got barely on it. Help me out right here. Okay.
Yes. Will ECU be disclosing the number of current positive COVID cases on campus every week? And can you expand on what reporting looks like on campus?
So there is a website. The ECU has a very vibrant page that is our COVID page that talks about our protocols, procedures, but it also has a link to what's happening on campus now, where we'll list active cases and what's going on. So if you go to that website, you can see almost a day-to-day what's happening at ECU and what's going on.
If we did not receive in the email with the health questionnaire that we need to fill out for early move-in, where should we see that?
If contact campus living, either by telephone or by email, and ask them to forward that to you at an email address where we can reach you. It should have been a link in one of the messages that you've gotten about drop-off. So right now we're primarily communicating to people who are coming for drop-off. Your language early move-in would indicate to me that you're talking about arriving on August 5th or 6th, and if that's the case, then information about that will be going out to people about a week from now, as we're trying to concern ourselves with just those people who are bringing their belongings and dropping them off over the next 2 weeks.
All right, thank you, Mr. McCartney. Waiting on our next question.
Should have the Jeopardy music playing.
Mm-hmm. We still order books online.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Can we still pick up textbooks in person, or do we have to order them online?
Can we still pick up textbooks in person, or do we need to order those online?
I've seen online, if you go to the Student Store website, there is now a live link where you can order your textbooks. Typically, as in years past, students and their families can go online and order their textbooks and request textbook pickup. So if you have questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out to the Student Store. You can go in, look at your schedule, or you can go course by course and look up your required textbooks. Certainly, if you have any questions, there might be some classes, some faculty don't require textbooks, so if you have any questions about that, don't hesitate to reach your faculty member to see if there is indeed a textbook, and if so, I know the university is working with textbook corporations for ebook options as well. So, but the online ordering for the fall textbooks is online to the Student Store website.
Thank you very much. Our next audience question. If the buses are not running and there are no parking spots left, how is my daughter able to get to her off-campus job?
The buses generally don't take students to a place where they would be going to an off-campus job anyway, even if the buses are running. And so if students are working off-campus someplace, they are always responsible for their own transportation there. The bus service we run into the community is leased bus service from the apartment complex where someone might live to come to campus for classes and then to get home. We expect to still be running those services. The only two off-campus routes that we used to run were shopping routes, one that went to the Target shopping center and one that went to the Walmart shopping center. And so students who have jobs need to make other arrangements for how they're going to get back and forth to their jobs.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCartney. All right, that is all for today. Thank you all for tuning into our Facebook Live, and a special thank you to our panelists for answering our audience questions and concerns. We believe that this conversation is very important leading up to our return to campus on August 10th. Please reach out to student government if you have any lingering questions. We would be glad to point you in the right direction.